Welcome back to Birds of a Feather Talk Together. Last week we talked about John's trip to the Falkland Islands, and this week we wanted to mix it up just a little bit again as we get closer towards the end of the year. Shannon had this great idea for us all to reflect on what we've learned about ourselves since starting this podcast. It's been a little over a year now, so we had fun reflecting on everything. We hope this helps you all get to know us a little better and understand why we're doing this. We also just like putting some good vibes out into the world during some uncertain times, and as we get close to the holidays, it's more important than ever for a little reflection. Okay, go grab your binoculars, some coffee or tea, and let's get into it.
You just never know. You have to pay attention to subtle signals in your life that tell you that there are other paths you can go on. I always tell people you can't be something you don't know. And I didn't know I existed when I was growing up. I didn't know my career existed. I didn't know people had PhDs. I had no clue about any of that. And to me, that's one of the things that has been really important about this podcast is if some little girl listens, she can be something else too.
That's right.
That's awesome. Shannon, I really like you had this idea, and I think we can maybe get into this now. Just we're all going to share kind of something that we've learned about ourselves through this podcast. And I think this is I'm really happy you brought this up because it's fun to kind of do some reflection. It's always awesome to get together and talk about birds, but really we have all kind of learned a lot. At least I have about myself too. So I don't know who wants to kick it off. I don't mind going first.
Go for it.
Okay. So I had kind of two things that I had written down. The first one was that something that I've learned about myself through this podcast is that I really like doing this. I really like spending time with all of you. I like talking about birds. I feel like learning about birds, finding out a new fact and like coming up with, oh, we could talk about this or that or that. And then being able to spend time like with the three of you talking about it. It's just like something that before we did this, I thought this seemed like a fun challenge and it's exceeded my expectations and is something that just I really enjoy. And the other thing that I wrote down that I learned about myself is that taking risks, I think, is a healthy and good thing. I think, it was a risk for Amanda and I to even go to our first like Audubon group without binoculars and try to follow people around and ask about birds. And that took us to meet John, and it was a risk for us to email John and a risk for us to sit down with both of you and kind of come up with the idea. And, that was all something that was totally stepping outside of our comfort zone. And, you learn that taking these risks and stepping outside of your comfort zone can be a good thing and that you can learn something out of it and then that can develop into something that's meaningful. So thank you to the three of you. And those were kind of my points that I realized when Shannon posed that question to us.
You catapulted me out of my comfort zone. It wasn't even a little bit. I mean, I love talking about birds. And so that, I'm lucky I get to do that in part of our career too and talk to people about birds of all different kinds of people. But the idea that I could actually listen to a podcast that has my own voice in it. So that's one of the things I've learned is that I can actually listen to my own voice. It doesn't mean I like it, but it's important for me to figure out what I do well or what I don't do well in the context of talking about birds. And so I actually listen to myself in these podcasts. In fact, John and I listen to it to and from the museum in the car, which is the reason I was willing to do this podcast in the first place. So I feel like I kind of like circled around my life, which is, not to get political, but in 2016, I divorced myself from the news for a really long period of time, divorced myself from social media, and I got into podcasts at that time. Another way to take you places when you can't travel or you don't know what you're doing. And for me, it was mostly murder podcasts. I got really interested in true crime and people who were invalidly convicted of crimes. And there's a science element to it that I liked. But there was also a lot of women in that genre of podcasting. And I felt comforted by listening to women's voices and seeing the world through women's eyes, which I don't do very much in science, right? For a long time, I'm the only woman. So that was a comforting aspect to me in a time that was not very comforting at all. So they kind of got me through that horrible time listening to podcasts. So I'm grateful. And then I thought, well, maybe people want to hear us, or maybe I just want to talk more. And so the impetus for me was that if even one person sees their world in a slightly different way or goes someplace by talking to us, then that's good. So I wanted people to get the idea of who we are and what we value and what the museum is like in a way that they probably couldn't without us talking so casually and intimately together. And people listen, which always shocks me. And the other thing that's been really important is that my mom listens.
Oh.
And she says she sees me happy.
Oh.
And given her medical conditions, that's enough to make me keep doing it.
Oh. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Wow, Shannon.
That's wonderful.
It's usually my weirdness that stops a conversation dead.
Do you want me to go next, Amanda?
You sure? Yeah. Let's hear it, John.
Well, I can't add a lot to what Shannon said, but I can still remember when I got the email from you guys and with the idea. And I think because of where you guys were coming from, it just was incredibly intriguing. And nothing has surprised me with respect to the fact that it's worked out. Because
it doesn't surprise you that people listen?
Well, that's not true. But I like you said, I mean, I figured we'd get on and start doing this. And like you said, if nobody listened, we'd have a good time talking to two friends about what we're doing. And I still feel that way. And so I like the fact, I love the fact that people are listening and enjoying it. And obviously I said it was my avocation, but it's not. It's what I do for a living. And I want people to love birds. And so having you guys be willing to say, look, we're new to this, but we want to know more about birds and the science behind birds was absolutely making it logical to start this up and see where we could take it.
I mean, it connects me to why I love birds, which I like too, because a lot of our job is things we weren't trained to do, managing people, managing budgets, trying to get funding. That we had no training in any of that. And that's a dominant factor in our lives sometimes, and it takes you away from why you are doing what you're doing at some level. And that this podcast kind of gave me that back, why birds are important.
That's awesome.
That's great. Yeah.
Okay, Amanda.
Oh, so I was going to say, like RJ mentioned, we kind of got into birding around the same time that we started this up. And I think this is the first time in my life where I've had like a definite hobby or thing I do for fun. And I feel like when you're an adult, it's really easy just to do work and your relationship and then call it a day. And then this has been amazing because I feel like, I think this experience, well, just getting into birding has been, so enriching as just to adopt a hobby and something that kind of colors everything we do. But also, I love that it gets the four of us together. We don't get anything out of this except the pleasure of being together. This isn't our job or anything. So it's really exciting to me that I personally care about something enough that I want to take time out of my weekend to get together with other people and talk about it. Just for me personally, that I love that that's going on in my life. So that's been something I've learned about myself. I've always known people that were really into things, whatever their hobbies were, but I've never been someone like that. And now I would characterize myself as someone like that. And I love that it's part of my life. Yeah. And I love that. Yeah. That we can get together and talk about something we all care about. Yeah. And just getting to know John and Shannon, RJ and I talk about this all the time. That's been the most important thing. That's been the biggest gift. That's been so much fun. And
yeah.
And also RJ, I knew RJ and I had been together for a long time before this started, of course, but to see him have this idea and then just run with it and execute it so beautifully, and then, keep us all motivated. And, and like I said, he and I get to talk to you two, which is like talking to celebrities. So that's huge to us. Like I'm so impressed with him that he's been able to make this happen for us, that we have this privilege every week, or that we talk regularly. I think that's so exciting. But yeah, just to see him soar the way he does. And you guys are, you always comment on what a great job he does. And it's like, I love seeing him do these amazing things, and having everybody recognize it is wonderful. So it's been so much fun.
For sure, RJ. When I listen to these podcasts, I purposefully listen at the end to all the people that are involved, because I think we should honor not just the voices, but the things that happen behind the scenes. Well, that takes like 2 minutes at the end of a podcast for them to talk about so-and-so does this, so-and-so does that, so-and-so does the other thing. And in our case, we have one person. That's it.
One person. Yes.
Oh.
That's right, Shannon.
Oh.
That's such a good point.
Oh, thanks. Thank you for recognizing that.
And none of the rest, well, I don't, Amanda might, but I know John and I could not do what you do, RJ.
Oh.
No, me too.
You guys all
Same
bring
here.
so much more to the table that I can't bring. So
No, everybody brings their own diverse sets of expertise, interests, experiences, and that's one of the things I really like about this, and I kind of like about people in general, that it takes a diverse crowd to make the best of something. Amanda, do you think this has changed how you work? Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Oh, gosh. So I write and edit. We do business intelligence for drug makers, and I edit a newsletter on neurodrugs, so the whole neurology and psychiatry space. And I think what this has brought to me work-wise is just like, I guess, kind of piggybacking on what I was saying earlier, like just having something outside of work that I'm really excited about. Yeah, I think like it's really easy to just, you put so much of your time and effort and energy and mind space into your job. It's really easy just to tune out the rest of your time. And this has been such a great focus and diversion of something that I'm really excited about. So yeah, I feel like that's what it's given me job-wise, is something to, and when I'm not working, I'm not totally tuned out. I'm just focused on something better.
Well, and as we've talked about, I could see this morphing into something much bigger for the two of you, and I love the thought of that. And one of the great things about these kinds of opportunities is you guys will be able to think about and look at birds for the rest of your lives.
Yes.
And so again, I still think, there are ways in which this podcast can continue to grow and develop that could lead to additional transformations for you guys over time.
And I'm going to get more sappy towards the end of this, which is that I've taken a lot of pictures, especially since our son was born, a lot. So he has a very well documented life. Sometimes he doesn't like that. But I think in the end he will. And certainly other people who are around us like the fact that I've documented their lives and their kids' lives so much. But this is a lasting thing for all of our families about what we sounded like and what we're like. Because I think this is a pretty honest representation of who we are. If you were sitting in our house right now, it wouldn't be any different than we are in this way. So that means that in the future, with these recordings, people will get an insight into who we are when we aren't there anymore, and we cannot be there physically, dying or whatever. But when I watch the way my mom is now, people can know what we were like before we might have some serious injury or some serious disease, which takes away the parts of ourselves. So this does that too.
No, you're right, Shannon. And I think about that too, in just these are snapshots in time of each of us where we were at a certain point in time. And yeah, that's really valuable and really special.
And I love how things have developed, like the mailbag questions.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that's all due to you, RJ, and putting that stuff together. But the truth of the matter is, it illustrates that people are listening and have questions, and it's great to have an opportunity to talk about what the answers might be.
Yes.
Yeah, how cool. We just had someone from like the UK write in. I mean, there was that one, I forget his name, that emailed us that was traveling to Chicago with his girlfriend and wanted to visit the Field Museum because he was listening to this. It's like, there's definitely people out there that are really enjoying this.
We get birds into the museum now from our listeners who said who they feel that we're comfortable enough and informal enough that they can email us. We're easy to find. And they email us and say, well, I've started putting birds in the freezer because of your podcast. So when can I bring them into the museum and drop them off? And so that is really good.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's meaningful. Yeah.
So thank you to everybody.
Yes. Especially those who use their freezer space for something so gross.
Oh, I know that makes my mom so upset because she would come here and she would say, I asked you to do one thing, which is take all the dead birds out of your freezer before I get here and try to fill it with food. And then she'd go downstairs to put something she made in the freezer. And she'd open the freezer and she's like, I asked you to do this one thing. Why is there a dead bird in your freezer?
That is hilarious.
And it's John. That's why there's still a dead bird in the freezer. It can't possibly be me.
I'm always amazed at how good I am at forgetting to bring him in the morning.
And yes, they're right beside the food. It's true. Or on top of the food.
No, not on top.
In a Ziploc. Oh, come on. In a Ziploc bag, they're on top of the food. Come on.
They're not on top of the food. Unless it's something big.
That's pretty awesome.
Well, Shannon, I'm so happy you brought up talking about this because this has been, just going through all this is so special to hear. And I mean, I'm sure our listeners appreciate hearing that too. So it's always nice to do some reflection too. So thank you so much for the idea because that was awesome.
That was awesome, Shannon.
All right. I think that's about it then.
Do some fun things that they might actually endanger your life, but you should do fun things anyway. Just don't tell your parents sometimes.
Yes.
Yes.
What does your family think about you doing this? How do they feel?
Mine?
Yeah.
They really like it. My parents listen to a lot of it. There's different people in my family listen to episodes here and there. I think they're all super excited about it. Yeah, they're all, at different degrees of like nature lovers. Nobody's as big as into birding as Amanda and I are, but they like, the outdoors and different like wildlife things. And I feel like this has kind of gotten them to dip their toe a little bit more into birding. And at least like they understand the appreciation of it because they like to go out and get outside and experience wildlife in other ways too. So, and both my grandparents I've told you about the ones that lived down in Sanibel Island. And so they, after they retired, worked at this wildlife conservation refuge down there as like their second career. And so they've always been really passionate just about wildlife. And when we were little kids, they would take us there and everything. So I think they recognized kind of that I took some of what I did in my career and combined it with some of my interests, and they can tell how much fun we're all having. So I think they're all into it. Yeah.
How about you, Amanda? What do your family say?
Yeah. So like I'd say my dad and my brother are probably our most faithful listeners in my family, and they're both hunters. So they really enjoy like when we do. Well, they like all the birds, but like birds they've encountered stuff. They hunt ruffed grouse and pheasant. So, and they really liked our woodcock episode and the sandhill crane. They're kind of like me. They like the birds that we've encountered. I really like when we do birds that we've seen and stuff. So, but yeah, they really enjoy it. And I always think of them because hunters are such big conservationists. And so I always want to give them a shout out for that.
For sure.
They do so much for habitat conservation. That's such a big part of hunting. So I always think about them and what they do for all birds and stuff. So, but yeah. So, yeah.
Thanks everyone for listening to our episode on what we've learned. We also wanted to give a big shout out to all of our listeners. Everyone has been so kind and fun to interact with. We get emails, DMs, and all kinds of messages from you all, and it means a lot to us. As much as the four of us like to get together, we also do this for all of you, and the regular interaction with all of you means the world. We hope you all have had as much fun as we have so far on our journey, and we're excited for some big things on the horizon. We have some really fun plans for 2025, and we'll be keeping you all up to speed on everything as we continue to record new episodes on a regular basis. Reminder, if you have a question for us, you can reach us at podcast.birdsofafeather@gmail.com. Okay, love you all. See you all next week.